Hey everyone, welcome back to the Insight Podcast. I'm your host Syte, the CMO at Syte, and I'm joined once again by my co-host Mike, the CEO at Syte. Today we're diving into a crucial topic for any e-commerce business, attribution models. Many people don't fully understand the importance of attribution models and how they can dramatically impact your marketing effectiveness and ROI. Attribution models help you understand where your sales are coming from and how to give credit to different marketing channels. This is essential for optimizing your strategies and maximizing your return on investment. In this episode, we'll decode various e-commerce attribution models, discuss their pros and cons, and help you determine which model is best suited for your business. By the end of this episode, you'll have a clear understanding of how to measure what matters and make data-driven decisions to boost your e-commerce store success. Welcome to the show, Mikey.
Thank you for having us, young Syte.
Of course. I hope the audience can tell that we finally updated and upgraded our sets just a little bit, some new little mics, and Mikey has finally upgraded his camera. So we hear your struggles.
I'm confident. 256 pixelated to HD.
HD, here we go.
I can see you now.
HD.
Oh.
So there are quite a few different attribution models that play a big role in the e-commerce space. There's your first click, your last click attribution models. And then we go into our multi-tier ones, which is your linear attribution, your time decay attribution, and finally your data-driven attribution models. So Mikey, let's kick things off with the first click. What is it? And what are the pros and cons of using first click?
All right. So let's picture a user. In general, I'm going to picture the same user for each of these models. So this user comes to a site 3 times. So they come the first time through a Google ad, they leave the site. They come the second time through a Facebook ad, they leave the site. They come the last time through an organic search, and eventually they purchase. What first click attribution says, it says give 100% of the credit to the first session of the user. So in this case, give 100% of the credit to the Google ad. Discount any value that the Facebook ad and the organic search had, and ignore that happened from an attribution standpoint. That's essentially what first click attribution speaks to. And the reasoning people or the pro first attribution people speak about that is that they say if the first channel never existed, the person would never come to the site in the first place, and therefore every other session post that has no value. That's the pro first attribution people. That's really what that means, and that was probably the first attribution model people used across the internet.
Second to that is your last attribution model, which is pretty much the reverse. Why would someone use last click attribution, Mikey?
Yeah. So last click attribution then replaced first click attribution as the most popular attribution model. And just to repeat, there's no right or wrong way. That's really what people believe is the truest reflection of what happens on their site. So in that case example, again, the first click came through Google ad, the second one was Facebook ad, and the last one organic search. In last click attribution, the people that are pro last click attribution, they say that, well, don't worry what happened before that final purchasing click, meaning that the person came when they purchased through that organic search. That was their third visit. That was their last visit. I want to credit 100% to that last visit because that's the visit that actually the user purchased off of. So that's where that reasoning is founded in, and that for the most part was the most popular model forever in the internet, probably up until GA4 came along and data-driven approach took over them. But again, last click attribution, its weakness is that it discounts all previous sessions that the user had, and then again, with obviously the exact converse or opposite to first click attribution, if the person never got to the site in the first place, how did that last click even happen? So that's where that model, I would say, kind of falls down.
Yeah, especially if it was coming from in the beginning, your first click was a Facebook ad, and then your final conversion was a Google ad, and you've got two different departments, like especially marketing agencies, and they're both working on the same account. And then they're fighting with each other. It's like, why I got it, this one. And then the other one will be like, no, I got it because they came to me first. And then it creates this big debate. And that's why many people have switched over to the multi-touch attribution models. Specifically, first it was the linear. And maybe you can touch a little bit on that. Why did people switch to linear, Mike?
Yeah, so linear, again, this is when people got more scientific and they understood that obviously each session has some value. And linear attribution speaks to, well, let's credit each session equally. So in this case, Google Ads, Facebook Organic, let's give a third of the credit to Google Ads, a third of the credit to Facebook Ads, and a third of the credit to Organic. And that, from a simplistic point of view, makes sense because each channel did make sense. Did contribute. And just to your final point before we get to data-driven approach, then time decay came along, and time decay spoke to the fact that makes sense to credit each channel because each channel did something. But what really time decay speaks to is that credit each channel differently depending on the order in which that took place. Meaning that, and there's two different types of time decay attribution model. You can have almost like weighted to the first click or weighted to the last click. So time decay essentially on weighted to the first click essentially says credit each touch point or each source to credit each source, but don't weight it evenly. So when you use time decay in favor of first click, it says credit the first session higher than you would in the last session. So in this case, again, Google, Facebook Organic, Google you would credit the most. So maybe you'd say 60% of the attribution goes to Google, a little bit less goes to Facebook, and even a little bit less goes to Organic. And then you have, again, the converse of that, where you have time decay but weighted to last click attribution, where you say credit the first click the least, then incrementally credit the next clicks more and more and more. And that's kind of the more advanced approaches that people used.
Yeah. And I think that's almost, and this is exactly where we're at now with data-driven, when, back in 2020, when the whole marketing world was in a frantic, or digital marketing world was in a frantic state, when GA4 came out and they were like, oh, we're switching everything, all of your accounts need to change, all of this. And I mean, even us at Syte, we saw it, we were running quite a few different, workshops just on GA4, and there was a huge demand for it because it was just such an unknown. So then, they switched it to data-driven attribution models. And this was almost like the amalgamation of all of the ones that we've spoken about, and the most accurate and the most specific attribution model. That's pretty much a data-driven attribution model. Mikey, I know I've kind of gone on a rant there, but what, let's strip that little bit. What is a data-driven approach in a simple, or what is it simply?
Yeah. So a data-driven approach is what the name implies. It's using data to credit the right touch points in a statistically correct way, meaning that sometimes a data-driven model will credit the first click more, sometimes it will credit the last click more, but essentially it will take into account a whole bunch of things like when did the user come to the site, how valuable was that user session, what source was the data, what did they do in that session. The data-driven approach is the most accurate way which encompasses all these themes and all these ideas in one. So now forever before GA4 existed, but when there was universal analytics, the standard default attribution was last click attribution. That's what it reported on. You could change it on the back end, but that's what it reported on. Now the standard default attribution model is data-driven attribution, which takes into account a whole bunch of factors. And again, it's the most accurate because it applies all these reasonings and all these thoughts.
Yeah, and I think just for for everyone listening, how do you go about actually, now that we've said it's the most accurate way of tracking your stuff, how do you, if you are still on that last attribution model, if you're still on that last click attribution model, how do you make the switch? How do you switch over to a data-driven attribution model? Is it as simple as switching a toggle, or is it quite a complicated process to go in and change all of your campaign goals and how your tracking set up?
No, so it's extremely simple. Like the nice thing in GA4, it shows you all attribution models without you actually deciding. So it will default to data-driven, but at any stage, historically, you can actually change that model to actually look at different models, how they would represent the data. The thing which I think most marketers and business owners get stuck on is two other concepts in attribution. And I'd say not often, they're not difficult concepts, but not well understood concepts of cross-channel attribution and click and view attribution. This is where we go even even more complicated, more deeper. So just in a quick summary is what the channels are able to do, Google, Facebook, all of them essentially, are not only able to report on click attribution, but view attribution. This is where it gets more complicated. This is where the data-driven approach also helps and comes into it. So a view attribution is, I'll just use Facebook as an example, or even Google as an example, it doesn't really matter, is when someone figures your ad. So whether they're in the audience on Facebook or whether they're in the audience in Google, Google and Facebook are able to then see, did that person figure the ad and not click on that ad, but just see your ad and then later purchase. They're able to actually see what was triggered on your screen, and then to see your purchasing behavior post that. So what we've spoken about here are all really like click attribution concepts. The view attribution is another whole Syte attribution where these clicks or these touches don't get tracked across platform. So, for example, let's say you're running a Facebook ad, and someone sees your Facebook ad, and they didn't have the intention to buy, but that Facebook ad now pushed them to like, oh wow, this brand exists. Now that person goes to Google and types in your brand name and actually gets your site and then purchases. Facebook actually is able to actually track that user that they've seen your ad, and then to take some credit that ad contributed to that sale. Now, it's impossible for analytics, which GA4, Google Ads, whatever the case is, to actually know that happened, because that view attribution only lives on Facebook. So this cross-channel and this view attribution absolutely complicates things. One thing which is important, just one other concept in this view attribution, is there are time delay view attributions, meaning that you can actually, again, you can see this all in Facebook, you can see this all in Google, and typically view attribution only counts in the first day, meaning that if someone sees your ad and then purchases post a day, so they see your ad on Monday and they only go and purchase on Thursday, view attribution typically does include that. It used to have an ability to look into the data to see if that happened. But for the most part, view attribution usually is a one-day view attribution, meaning that that ad needs to have driven decision now with a user in order to count it. But view attribution complicates that matter.
And then is there a universal right attribution model that every business model and e-commerce owner can follow, or is it very niched into what I need for my current campaigns? Obviously, you do need to, if you're going to make it a bit more complicated, you need to be running multiple channels that you're really going to see the effects of having a data-driven attribution model as your core focus. Is there a universal right, or?
I would say there's a universal most accurate. So I can't stress enough the importance of it's not just a reporting function attribution. It's really it should drive decisions for the marketer. That's really what the point of attribution. So I'm just going to give you a quick example of that. Now, what often happens is Google sometimes comes in and looks the hero, and it's maybe you can argue that with any channel. But if someone's come through 20 Facebook ads and they've come to the site, and then Google Ads has the last click because now the person's learned about your brand through Facebook and they'll now search your brand name and actually come through that click, Google will take the credit. Right? Again, if you're looking at a last click attribution, you're not looking at data-driven attribution, and if those are view assist attributions, so all those types of things. Now, what you might do if that's the case, if you say, wow, I've only spent X amount on Google and my return is amazing, it's 100X, let me start spending more money on Google. And in that example, that would be the wrong decision, because Google, yes, constituted or helped that conversion to happen, but it wasn't the cause of that conversion. And what people then do unknowingly, they then put more money into Google where Google might be the wrong approach, because they haven't considered the attribution effect of different channels. And that's really the point of attribution, to understand it clearly and deeply, to make proper decisions in terms of where you want to actually spend your money. So to your question, the most accurate way, and people want to go the deepest, there's a number of tools that have what they call like cross pixels. So like Triple Whale is probably the most well known of them, but there's lots of them out there. And what that typically is, it's typically uses a universal pixel. So instead of using GA4 to track conversions, which can't really track view attribution conversions across different channels, instead of using Google Ads to track it, which really typically favors Google Ads, and instead of using Facebook Ads to track it, which typically favors Facebook Ads, you have these universal pixels which encompass all your channels and give you and almost apply their data-driven weighting to each channel, including which encompasses click attribution, view attribution, and all different types of models. And that's the most accurate way to actually attribute. Now, If you're not spending crazy money on digital, that's probably like a step too far because these platforms are quite expensive, these universal pixels or these consolidated pixels. But if you are spending a significant amount of money, you want to know exactly your return on each channel precisely, as accurately as possible. And that's probably the best way to do it.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into e-commerce attribution models. I hope you found this episode informative and that you now have a better understanding of how to measure what matters and how to allocate your marketing resources more effectively. To recap, we covered what an attribution model is and why it's crucial for your business. We covered the most common attribution models, including first click, last click, linear, time decay, and data-driven attribution, and a little bit more on the technical side deeper in the episode. And then we went into the pros and cons of each model and how to choose the right one for your business. Understanding and implementing the right attribution model can dramatically impact your marketing effectiveness and your return on investment. So please take the time to analyze your customer journey and make real data-driven decisions to boost your e-commerce store's success. Thanks for tuning in. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe to the Syte podcast and leave a comment down below. I respond to every single one. Your feedback is invaluable, so please don't forget to leave a review. And yeah, stay tuned for next week's episode where we'll dive into more strategies of e-commerce success. Until then, keep smashing it. Cheers.